Hello and welcome to the Kim Iverson Show. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. So, Congress passed a bill making it nearly impossible for Donald Trump or any future president to leave NATO if elected. And also, the bill allows the FBI to continue conducting warrantless spying on Americans. That's what our Congress is up to. It was all baked into their massive defense spending bill, the NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act. So, let's go over some of the details. So let's start off with NATO and how they were able to block Donald Trump and really any future president from ever leaving NATO without the approval of Congress or without an act of Congress or Senate approval. This was presented by Senators Tim Kaine, who is a Virginia Democrat, and also Marco Rubio, a Florida Republican. They teamed up and they decided that they wanted to ensure that no anti-war president would be able to leave without the approval of the warmongers in Congress. Tim Kaine said in a statement, NATO has held strong in response to Russian President Vladimir Putin's war in Ukraine and rising challenges around the world. First of all, I don't know where he gets that, this idea that NATO is held strong. Aren't we talking about winding that war down? Did NATO send any troops in to help Ukraine at all? What was the role of NATO exactly except instigating and funding? Goes on to say this reaffirms U.S.'s support for this crucial alliance that is foundational for our national security. It also sends a strong message to authoritarians around the world that the free world remains united. Does it, though? Does it? Did Vladimir Putin not invade Ukraine because of NATO's existence? Where exactly is this logic coming from? There is a war going on. The whole idea of NATO was to prevent the spread of the Soviet Union, which doesn't exist anymore. Now you've got Russia, and they've got a beef with Ukraine because of NATO, not in spite of NATO. And yet these members of Congress who are delusional believe that the continuation of NATO is going to prevent war, when we're pretty sure that the continuation of NATO and the expansion of NATO is exactly the thing that caused the war. But never mind that. Don't you even think about that. Marco Rubio said, we must ensure we are protecting our national interests and protecting the security of our democratic allies. Again, not really sure exactly where they're getting that. We'd have to look back historically at what exactly NATO has done. When has NATO been used? It hasn't ever been used except after 9/11 was the only time that NATO Article 5 was ever enacted. And that was obviously the United States that was attacked. And so the U.S. asked for NATO assistance in that. And some of the nations contributed and some of them didn't to troops in Iraq and in Afghanistan. Otherwise, there's been no European country can actually definitively say the reason why we're not being invaded by XYZ country, whichever one it is because of NATO. Germany was the one that was expanding and invading, and Germany's a part of NATO. So Germany can't say, well, we're not being invaded because of NATO. I just the logic. I just am not really sure where this comes from, where the logic comes from. Ultimately, obviously, what's going on here is that you got a bunch of warmongers in Congress that just love to flex their muscles all the time. They love to spend a lot of money. NATO's one way that they're able to do this. It's a money laundering scheme with the Defense Department or the defense contractors. They don't want to let that go. They want to continue this charade. You've got anti-war sentiments really reverberating through American society on both sides of the aisle. And people are wanting to see a ramping down of the military-industrial complex, and they want to see less escalation, fewer escalations, and they're really wondering why NATO is even in existence anymore since the Soviet Union isn't around. That perhaps there is a need to realign ourselves with allies that make sense, perhaps building up the alliances with the neighbors that we have around us rather than the ones all the way over in Europe and worrying about what's going on in Eastern Europe, which is 8,000 miles away from us. So Americans are kind of growing weary of this, and the presidents of the United States who are being elected, people that are running for office, are reflecting that, as they should if they're being honest as a politician truly trying to represent the American people. But nonetheless, there's this derangement, this delusion going on in Congress. I know this is for our benefit, this is for our protection, and all it's been doing is leading to wars, and Americans are, quite frankly, quite sick of it. So they baked that in there. So Donald Trump will not be able to, this is expected to be signed by Joe Biden. It is baked into the overall defense bill, which is $886 billion, which is a 3% increase over last year. So it's baked into that. And of course, Joe Biden is planning on signing this. There's no reason why he wouldn't. It's got everything that everybody wants, right? A lot of money for a lot of war. It does have about a 5.3% raise for military personnel. So that's going to be the thing that people use. Like, how dare you not want to give our service members raises? They should have raises. Everybody in America should get a raise right now, right, with the way inflation is. So the Senate passed this bill. One thing that was also baked into this that is extremely highly controversial is Section 702. Section 702 is the provision that allows the FBI to spy. They're supposed to be spying on non-Americans who are not on American shores. So it's supposed to be overseas spying on non-Americans, and the section allows them to spy using American companies. So these are foreigners who are in foreign countries, but they're using American software. And so Section 702 was to allow them to get into that American software, even though those companies are based in the United States, but still spy on the people, so as long as they themselves are not in the United States. The problem is it was used over 200,000 times in 1 year. 1 year alone, it was used over 200,000 times to spy on Americans, which is not allowed without a warrant. And so this is highly controversial. The FBI says, trust me, we fixed it. We're not going to be doing that anymore. We changed our own internal systems and rules and regulations. And so we're not going to be doing that anymore. So you don't need to modify. The question was whether or not they wanted to modify Section 702. Several people want to modify it, and they want to ensure that if you're going to spy on Americans, you need a warrant to do that. Makes sense. The FBI says, well, why? That would be cumbersome and a lot of red tape and bureaucracy, and it would slow things down, and we're trying to catch terrorists, don't you know? So they don't want there to be a warrant requirement on these searches. This was baked into the NDAA. They bake everything in just to get everything passed. This is how Congress works. They just bake everything into these ginormous bills, and then they get mad at you and say, well, how dare you not give raises to our service members who haven't had raises in like 10 years. So they need a raise because it's been 10 years. And so how dare you deny them that? So it makes you look like a bad guy. Well, they baked this in. The thing is, though, is that Speaker Johnson actually only baked it in for 4 more months. So this isn't baked in for years or for a very long time. It's a 4-month extension of this provision, allowing them to spy, to conduct warrantless searches and spying on Americans. They say they're not going to do it, but you just got to trust them. Take their word for it. So he baked that in there, said, okay, 4 months, and then we'll debate this. And this passed. There were still a lot of people that did not want to pass this, mostly Republicans, who were very much against this spying provision. But it passed anyway. The Senate passed the overall legislation 87-13. Here's Justin Amash, who was a former member of Congress. His family, by the way, he's a Palestinian. His family, he was a Republican and then he went independent. His family was slaughtered in Gaza by Israel just in this latest war since October 7th. Christian family, they were the ones that were killed in the Christian church. He wrote, the Senate has once again betrayed the American people, trampling on the Constitution and our rights in bipartisan fashion. The first 2 images list the senators who voted yay, to keep unconstitutional warrantless surveillance of Americans via FISA 702 and the National Defense Authorization Act, and those who voted nay to oppose FISA 702 inclusion. The second 2 images list the senators who voted yay to pass the NDAA with FISA 702. Sorry, I just repeated that. Anyway, or maybe he said it twice, but let's just go over the yays and the nays. So the yays, 87 yays, this is the Senate, not the House. A lot of Democrats, a lot of Republicans. Let's go over, that was 87 of them. Let's go over the 13 nays, because they're more of the ones holding on. Cory Booker voted no. I'm not sure if he voted no because of this exact provision or if there was some other reason. Braun, Hawley, Lee, Loomis, Markey, Merkley, Rand Paul, Bernie Sanders voted against this, Vance, Elizabeth Warren, Welch, and Wyden. So about equal split, Democrats, it actually is an equal split between Democrats and Republicans, and then Sanders, being more of a Democrat, also voted no on this. So that was interesting. So you got an even split on the nose. But in the House, a majority of Democrats voted yes for expanding the military bill and giving a lot more money. That was a 310 to 118 vote. So 118 members of Congress said no to this. Here's Thomas Massey saying, here are the 118 representatives who voted to protect your right to privacy. So you're talking about the nay to FISA's warrantless surveillance as part of the NDAA. He said, we lost, but it was close. We needed 143 votes to stop FISA since they suspended the rules to bring it to the floor. But so they were short. They needed 143 and they got 118. But the nays on that, you look at the Republican to Democrat breakdown, it was 73 Republicans said no, 45 Democrats said no, and more Democrats said yes to authorizing the overall defense bill. That says a lot, right? I mean, that's saying something that now Democrats are the ones passing these defense bills, these massive defense bills, more so than Republicans. Ooh, we are living in the twilight zone, aren't we? There were some things baked into this bill. Maybe that enticed Democrats that are still having to do with war, which still just proves that they're warmongers, that they've become the party of warmongers. But $300 million was baked in for Ukraine. So this is definitely a lot smaller than what Joe Biden wants to do. He wants to do a $61 billion package that gives $14 billion or something to Israel and the rest to Ukraine. But that has not made any headway yet. I'm not sure if it will, considering the events going on in Israel. I think a lot of people that have been very pro-Israel, they're starting to shift and change their mind on this war. We're seeing that happen quite a bit. So not sure if that one's actually going to pass. But what they were able to bake into this one was $300 million to Ukraine, which is still a significant amount of money. But here's the thing, it's over the course of 2 years. So that says something. They're going to trickle this money over the course of 2 years. Are they going to do that because they think this war is going to keep going for 2 years? Do they think that's a good idea to extend this war for 2 years and just trickle money to Ukraine during that time? So that's where we're at with this massive defense spending bill baked into it, money for Ukraine, no getting out of NATO, Donald Trump. They're trying to basically hamstring him so that if he does get into the White House again, which it looks like he will, I mean, at this point, he's winning in all the polls. And, if the election were held today, I think he would win. Of course, we still have almost a year, so anything could happen. But it looks like what they're doing is they're gearing up for if Trump is to become president. And what they're doing is they're doing the thing that actually causes us to have nothing happen in this country. And that is they're trying to strip the presidency of power. Now, in some ways, maybe the presidency needs to be stripped of some power. And certainly, I think when it comes to war powers, that should actually be through Congress, and it should be through the Senate, right? It should be something that requires an act of Congress or Senate approval, I think, to go into war, to approve war. Leaving NATO, on the other hand, that could be debated because that's not being in NATO triggers us to go to war through the provision of NATO without the act of Congress, and really going to war should be an act of Congress. So NATO actually shouldn't even exist. Maybe it could be challenged as unconstitutional in that way. That's an interesting thought. Somebody should maybe think about that, challenging NATO on a constitutional basis, that it would march us into war without congressional approval. It commits us to war without congressional approval. But again, it hasn't really been tested, so it's a bit muddy. They're trying to hamstring Donald Trump. They clearly want to strip him of some power. When they do that, the last time they did that quite a bit was Nixon. They really didn't like Nixon. So they really did all they could to strip him of power. And by the way, and I'm not going to get into it tonight because we don't have time, but I'm sure we will in the future. But that's why we now have a ton of government shutdowns. Every year we're facing potential government shutdown. They didn't have government shutdowns prior to the 70s. There was no threat of this. And now every year it's like, we're at the threat of government shutdown. Everything's oh no. And they scramble and it's a big charade and it's nutty. And it's because they stripped the executive branch of particular powers gave them to Congress, and Congress doesn't know how to use them, or they do politically. They use them very, very well politically, and that's all they do. And so it's just it's just nothing ever gets done, and Congress ends up being the most ineffective branch of government. And because they're so ineffective, if they strip the executive of effectiveness, then nobody's effective, and we end up just with, an ineffective, totally useless government that just takes our money and spends it on war. That's what we're at. That's where we're at right now. So yay, more money to war. Everybody happy? All right. Let me tell you guys about my favorite sheets in the world. They are called Cozy Earth. I absolutely love these. I was sent a set of these sheets from the company to test out. I was thinking, oh, okay, how great can sheets possibly be? And I tried them, and I actually absolutely love them. And they are really great. They're really great sheets. So I've since spent my own money on buying more of their products. I bought a blanket for the bed, more sheets. I'm hoping I get some Christmas gifts this year from Cozy Earth, from, maybe my husband. Maybe if he's listening or watching this show, he can maybe get me some, I don't know, pajamas or a bathrobe or something, or some nice towels. I'm just putting it out there. So here's the thing. These are great Christmas gifts, and there's still time for you to get some. They've got sheets, pajamas, bathrobes, blankets, and more. They've got so many great things, and they will make an excellent holiday gift for your spouse or your mom or your dad or your amazing secretary or whoever you think might really enjoy just soft, wonderful luxury to wrap themselves in. So whether it's their life-changing luxury pajamas, their oh-so-soft bedding, it really is wonderful, their loungewear, or their plush bath towels, you're going to love shopping and gift-giving at Cozy Earth. So simply swap out your current sheets for soft, breathable, temperature-regulating sheets from Cozy Earth. And if you don't agree that they're fantastic, they will refund your purchase price, plus shipping, no questions asked. So all Cozy Earth products can be returned or exchanged within 100 days. So you get a 100-night sleep trial of their products, and their products also include an additional 10-year warranty against defects. Now, how can Cozy Earth make such a guarantee? And that is because their bedding is made from viscose from bamboo, so it traps less heat, enabling people to sleep more comfortably year-round. And the gift you're going to get this holiday season from me is you go to CozyEarth.com and enter the code Iverson, and you're going to save 40% off those products. So CozyEarth.com, code Iverson at checkout, save 40% of your order, which is a great deal. So get some good Christmas gifts.